I didn't realize I was being watched until it had already been happening for some time, long enough that by the time it truly registered, the pattern had already rooted itself quietly into my routine. At first, it felt insignificant, like one of those passing moments where you catch someone looking in your direction and then immediately forget about it. The first time I noticed him was in a grocery store parking lot at night. The place was busy, filled with a low hum of engines, shopping carts rattling over pavement, and people moving in every direction. Nothing about the setting suggested anything unusual. Yet there he was, standing a few rows over near a cart return, completely still, facing in my direction. I remember thinking it was slightly odd that he wasn't doing anything, not loading groceries or heading toward a car, but the thought passed quickly. I got into my car, shut the door, and drove away without giving it another second of consideration. A few days later, I saw him again, and this time something about it lingered. I had just parked outside my apartment building and was stepping out of my car when I noticed a figure across the street. He stood partially concealed behind another parked vehicle, but the posture was unmistakable, upright, motionless. It took me a moment to recognize him, but when I did, I found myself staring longer than I should have, trying to confirm what my mind was already suggesting. As soon as my focus locked onto him, he turned his head slightly, not abruptly, but just enough to obscure his face from view. It wasn't a reaction of surprise or embarrassment. It felt intentional, like he didn't want to be seen clearly. That was the first time a quiet unease settled in my chest. I went inside, locked my door, and tried to rationalize it. People pass through the same places all the time. It didn't mean anything. It couldn't mean anything. But after that, I started noticing him more often. Not every day, not even regularly, but just frequently enough that it stopped feeling like coincidence. Sometimes he'd be across the street from my building, other times further down the sidewalk, barely within sight. Once I saw him standing near a gas station a few blocks away. Every encounter followed the same pattern. He never approached, never spoke, never made any overt gesture. He would simply exist within my line of sight, positioned carefully, as if distance itself was part of some unspoken rule. And every time I looked at him for more than a moment, he would turn away, not quickly, not as if caught, but smoothly, avoiding direct eye contact with unsettling precision. That consistency was what made it worse. After a couple of weeks, I became hyper-aware of my surroundings. Reflections in windows became tools. Shadows in parking lots caught my attention, and I found myself glancing over my shoulder more often than I ever had before. Most of the time, everything was normal, which almost made it worse, because then, without warning, I would see him again. Same distance, same stillness, same silent observation. Always watching, but never allowing himself to be truly seen. I considered reporting it, but what would I even say? That someone existed near me occasionally? That they looked in my direction and then looked away? There was nothing concrete, nothing actionable, nothing that didn't sound like the beginnings of paranoia. So instead, I tried to ignore it. And for a while, I managed to convince myself it didn't matter. One night I was returning home late, sometime after midnight. The parking lot was mostly empty, the usual noise replaced by a heavy, unnatural quiet. I pulled into my spot, turned off the engine, and sat there for a moment, absent-mindedly checking my phone before stepping out. That's when I saw him. He was standing near the entrance of my building, closer than he had ever been before. Not across the street, not down the sidewalk, but right there, within a distance that felt undeniably personal. I was scared, my hands still resting on my phone, my thoughts struggling to catch up with what I was seeing. He wasn't hiding this time. He wasn't turned away. He was facing me. I didn't get out of the car. I just sat there staring, trying to understand what had changed. And then something hit me, something that made my chest tighten. For the first time, he wasn't turning away. He was letting me look at him. I reached to lock my doors even though they were already secured. It was a meaningless action, a reflex. But when I looked back up, my breath caught in my throat. He was close. I hadn't seen him move. There had been no sound, no indication of motion, and yet the space between us had shrunk. Panic surged through me, sharp and immediate. I fumbled to start the car again, my hands suddenly unsteady. That's when he moved, but not his body. His head turned toward me. I didn't hesitate. I threw that bitch into a reverse and sped out of the lot, not daring to look back, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out every other sound. I didn't return that night. I stayed at a motel, clinging to the fragile reassurance that maybe, somehow, I had overreacted, that exhaustion or fear had distorted what I'd seen. The next day I went back. Everything appeared normal. The building, the hallway, my apartment, unchanged, untouched. There were no signs of anyone having been there, no indication that anything was wrong. For a while I almost believed I had imagined it, until later that evening. There's a small window beside my front door, one I've never paid much attention to. It only offers a narrow view of the hallway outside, barely enough to notice anything meaningful. But as I walked past it, some instinct I couldn't explain, made me look. And for a split second, I thought I saw someone standing there, right outside my door. I stopped immediately, my entire body going still, and forced myself to look again. There was no one there. The hallway was empty. I stood in silence, listening, straining to catch even the faintest sound. Footsteps, breathing, movement, anything. Nothing. Eventually, I convinced myself it was just my imagination, a lingering effect of everything that had happened. But something had already shifted. Now every time I leave or return, I check that window without thinking, because I realized something after that night. Something I can't ignore. He never moved while I was looking at him, which means every time he got closer, I must have looked away first. I only talked to him for maybe 10 minutes, which is the part that still doesn't make sense to me. How something that brief, something so ordinary on the surface, could turn into what it eventually did. It was a Friday night, nothing unusual, just me and two friends at a bar not far from my apartment. The place was loud but comfortable, music filling the background, people talking over drinks, the kind of atmosphere you don't really think twice about. Around 1:30, my friends decided they wanted to stay longer, but I had work early the next morning, so I told them I was heading out. I wasn't drunk, just tired enough to want my bed more than another hour of noise. When I stepped outside into the cooler air, he was already there, leaning casually against the wall near the entrance, a cigarette between his fingers. At first, I didn't pay him any attention. I was focused on my phone, pulling up a ride, checking how long it would take, already half out of the night mentally. That's when he spoke. "You leaving alone?" And I looked up, a little surprised but not alarmed. It wasn't strange for people to talk outside bars. It happened all the time. I told him, yeah, I was just waiting for an Uber, and he nodded like that was the most normal thing in the world before saying it wasn't safe around here that late. It should have felt off, that kind of line, but it didn't. Not yet. He didn't step closer, didn't act pushy or aggressive. If anything, he seemed calm, almost reassuring, like someone just making casual conversation to pass the time. We talked for a few minutes after that. Nothing deep or personal, just surface-level things. He said he'd been inside earlier, asked if the place was any good, made a couple of small observations about the crowd. It all felt normal, forgettable even. Then he glanced at my phone and casually said, Your ride's still like 10 minutes away, right? I remember frowning slightly because I hadn't told him that, but my screen had been on, so I assumed maybe he'd just seen it. It didn't seem worth questioning. I said yeah, and he took another drag from his cigarette before pointing down the street, saying he lived that way and could walk with me for a bit, just until my car arrived. I hesitated, but only for a second. There was nothing about him that felt immediately threatening, nothing that set off a clear alarm in my head. So I said yes, and that was the mistake. The kind that feels invisible when you make it, but obvious later. We started walking, and at first everything felt completely normal. There were still people around, cars passing, lights spilling out from nearby shops and buildings. He kept a comfortable distance, a step or two beside me, never crowding my space, never doing anything that would force me to react. The conversation faded into short, occasional comments, the kind you barely register. Then after about a minute, he said something that made me slow down without realizing it. "You don't usually leave this early." I turned to look at him, confused, asking what he meant, and he just shrugged like it was nothing, like it didn't matter. He said he'd seen me there before, that I usually stayed later. That's when something shifted. Not panic, not fear exactly, just a sudden awareness that hadn't been there before. I told him I didn't think so, and he didn't argue, didn't push it. He just nodded and said, maybe he was mixing me up with someone else. We kept walking, but now I was paying attention in a way I hadn't been before, noticing the way he spoke, the way he moved, the small gaps in what he said. When we reached the corner where I'd normally wait for my rides, my phone buzzed, 2 minutes away. I told him it was fine, that I'd just wait there, and he stopped walking, looking at me for a second before saying, "You don't want to stand here." I asked why, and he said it was too open, that I should wait a little further down. I didn't move. Something in me had already decided not to listen. I told him I was good, and there was a pause. Then he smiled, like he already knew something I didn't. "Okay," he said almost lightly, and then added, "Your car's a white Hyundai, right?" That's when everything dropped. I hadn't told him that. I hadn't even seen the car yet. Instinctively, I turned to scan the street, my eyes jumping between headlights and passing vehicles, trying to figure out which one was mine. And when I turned back, he was already walking away fast. Not running, not drawing attention, but fast enough that it didn't feel casual anymore. I stood there for a second, trying to tell myself there was a reasonable explanation, that I was missing something obvious. Then my phone buzzed again. My driver had arrived. A white Hyundai pulled up, and I got in immediately, locking the door without thinking. Everything after that felt normal on the surface. The driver asked my name, confirmed the destination, started driving. But I checked the side mirror as we pulled away, and there he was, still at the corner, standing exactly where I'd left him, watching the car, completely still. I told myself that was it, just a strange encounter, something unsettling but isolated. But the next night, I got a follow request on Instagram from an account with no profile picture, no posts, nothing recognizable. I ignored it. Then came the message. "You made it home safe." I didn't reply. I blocked it immediately. The next day, another account, same message. That's when it stopped feeling like coincidence. I locked everything down after that. Private accounts, new passwords, no more posting my location, no more tagging places. I thought that would be enough, that cutting off access would end it. But about a week later, walking home from work in broad daylight, I noticed a car parked across the street from my building. White, same model, no one inside. I told myself it wasn't the same one, that cars like that are everywhere, that I was connecting things that didn't belong together. I went inside, locked my door, tried to let it go. But that night, another message came through from another new account. Just one line. "You don't need Uber anymore." I didn't sleep at all that night. I was already moving into a new place soon. Now I want to do it fast. I moved quietly without telling anyone except my family. New place, different area, different routine. After that, nothing happened. No messages, no accounts, no sign of him anywhere. I felt relief that he's gone. I started thinking twice before meeting people in bars. Trust me, it never ends well. I didn't realize how long it had been going on until the first time I actually tried to avoid her. And that's what messed with me the most. It meant all those little moments I brushed off before weren't random. They were building into something, and I just didn't notice. At the beginning, she was nothing. Just another person on the late bus. I take it pretty often after going out, usually somewhere between like 12:30 and 2 in the morning, depending on how the night goes. It's never packed at that hour, just the same rotation of people, a couple of tired workers, some students glued to their phones, maybe someone who had a bit too much to drink. It's quiet in a weird way, like everyone's just trying to get home without interacting. The first time I saw her, she was already sitting there when I got on, near the back by the window. Her head was slightly down, hair falling over part of her face, and nothing about her stood out. I didn't think twice. I sat a few rows ahead, put my headphones in, and that was it. Then I saw her again the next night. Same bus, same time, same exact seat. I remember noticing it for a second like, oh, okay, but it didn't feel important. People have routines, especially on late buses, but the third time, something about it felt different. When I stepped on, she looked up. Not fully, not in a way that felt like she was trying to make eye contact, just enough to clock that I was there. Then she dropped her gaze again like nothing happened. It was subtle, but it stuck in my head for some reason. After that, I started noticing her more. Not every single night, but enough that it stopped feeling like coincidence. And then it stopped being just the bus. One night I got off 2 stops earlier than usual because I wanted to grab food from a late place I like, and she got off too. I noticed immediately, but she didn't head toward the restaurant or anywhere nearby. She just stayed by the bus stop, standing there, facing away from me like she had no actual reason to get off, except that I did. That's when it stopped feeling normal. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking it, but after that, I started paying attention for real. And once I did, it got harder to ignore. Whenever I changed something, what time I got on, where I sat, when I got off, she adjusted too. Never in an obvious way, never anything you could point at and say, that's weird, but always enough that she stayed connected to whatever I was doing. It was quiet, deliberate, like everything she did had a purpose. So one night I decided to test it properly. Instead of sitting near the front like I usually do, I walked all the way to the back of the bus, right past her. Close enough that, for the first time, I could actually see her face clearly. She didn't look up, didn't react at all, just sat there like I wasn't even there. But as I passed, I noticed her phone was on, and the screen caught my attention. It was the bus route map, and there was one stop highlighted, my stop, the one I always get off at. That's when my chest tightened a little, but I kept it together and sat down right behind her. I told myself to stay calm, not do anything stupid, just watch. She didn't move, didn't scroll, didn't type, didn't even move an inch in her seat. She just held the phone like that, screen still lit, that same stop marked. Then slowly, without turning her head at all, she tilted the phone just slightly, just enough to make sure I could see it clearly. Like she knew I was looking. That part got to me. I looked away immediately, trying not to react, but my heart was already going faster than it should have been. When the bus reached the next stop, I got up without thinking it through and stepped off. It wasn't my stop, I just needed to get off that bus. The doors closed behind me, and I stood there watching through the window. She was still inside, sitting exactly the same, not moving, not even looking in my direction. Then the bus pulled away, and for a few seconds I actually felt relief. It lasted maybe 10 seconds. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, and she was there, just standing a few steps away, like she'd always been there. I didn't see her get off, didn't hear the doors open again, nothing. But somehow she was there, closer than she'd ever been before. She wasn't even looking directly at me. Her head was tilted slightly, like she was trying to figure something out, like I was the thing she was studying. Then she spoke, really quietly, calm, almost casual. "You got off early." That was it. No emotion, no confusion, no accusation, just a statement. I didn't answer. I didn't even think about answering. I just turned and started walking, fast. At first, I could hear her footsteps behind me, matching mine for a few seconds, and then they stopped. I didn't turn around. I just kept going until I hit a main road where there were more people, more light, more noise, anything that felt normal. When I finally looked back, she was gone, completely gone. No one there, nothing out of place, like it never happened. I stopped taking the bus after that, at least for a while. I switched things up, used rides instead, changed my schedule, did everything I could to break whatever pattern had been there. Eventually, I went back, but not the same way. Different route, different time, trying to make sure there was no overlap with whatever that was. I haven't seen her again since. No sign, no repeats, nothing I can point to.